problem of deep fakes, lack of trust in content manipulation. It's a serious problem that is increasingly pervasive in our society. Wasim Khaled is the CEO and a founder of Blackbird.AI, who deals with this problem. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, nice setup here. You guys, you're just on with Trinity, so appreciate you guys making some time for us.
Absolutely.
Let me start with the company. You started the company in 2017, correct?
That's right.
Why? Why did you start the company?
Well, I mean, my co-founder and I both thought that this was going to be an existential problem, really the problem of our time. It's not just really about disinformation, misinformation, but about manipulation of people's perception. We think of it today as a cyber attack on human perception and narrative manipulation, and it kind of touches every walk of life, enterprise, national security, and we'll talk about that a little bit today, but I think today now more than ever, I think that's relatable to everybody.
What is a narrative attack, and how is it different from fake news or alternative facts or whatever other rubric you want to use?
Sure. So a narrative attack is actually some language we developed to define this thing, because this is not really about fake news. It's not about what is true, what is not. It's not about removing content. It is about, again, that manipulation of the narrative. A narrative attack is any kind of assertion in the information ecosystem that can manipulate and shape perception about a person, a place, a thing, a product, what have you. And it's really about tradecraft by state actors, by opportunistic threat actors that are trying to create some sort of financial outcome, societal outcome, reputational outcome for some sort of gain or ideology. And so it is this notion of the tradecraft that we set out to detect, because no one wants to be manipulated, or they at least want to understand what is happening. If we really think about the kinds of impact, you mentioned like to financial markets, right? If you look at like the global risk report from the World Economic Forum, which just came out this morning, they put misinformation and disinformation right at #1 for the next 2 years again. If you think about it, in this world, that's #1, and then among that group of items, there's things like state conflict, cyber insecurity, extreme weather, and it still comes in first. Now, they call it misinformation, disinformation. We think of it again as this kind of narrative manipulation, but it's telling that this is seen as one of the biggest global threats of our time. If you look at something like the Forrester Threat Intelligence Report, they're looking at cybersecurity and the ability to protect against narrative attacks. And we were really happy to see that Blackbird was featured as really the only company that actually has some sort of technology that can defend against these kinds of narrative attacks, amongst other companies like CrowdStrike, Google, and Microsoft listed that don't have these capabilities yet. Last thing to add is like Gartner, they say there's going to be approximately $30 billion spent by enterprise organizations by 2028 fighting these kinds of problems. So it's critical that leaders and executive teams, organizations around the world have defenses against this kind of attack.
So is that your TAM? I mean, roughly, is that like a $30 billion TAM, or is it? I mean, it would seem to me they're going to spend that money with crisis management, with a lot of people, and if you can automate that and streamline that, you can get a piece of that pie.
A big piece of it. I see the TAM is even larger than that, because there's this national security component, there's a cybersecurity component, and a lot of CISOs, like Chief Information Security Officers, threat intelligence teams, in addition to the comms teams, have been coming to us to understand how and why are these incidents occurring, and how do we actually see it? How do we observe what's happening so we can get decision dominance around this problem before we get hit?
Is the why predominant? What are the patterns? Is the why predominantly financial gain? Is it to try to take out a competitor, or wreak havoc in a society? What's the motivation here?
I mean, all of the above, right? It really depends on the flavor of the actor that is trying to drive that outcome. But we've seen things like during an M&A, someone might get in there and try to change perception around that M&A so they can be short selling on the other side by creating a slowdown. Fake memos, controversies, fabricated controversies. I mean, I would just think about today with generative AI and synthetic media getting as realistic as it is, On the day of a big launch, you could suddenly have a deep-faked group of insiders that work at the company just flooding the internet with some sort of a discussion around how this product doesn't work, or that the whole thing is a fraud. And then you have everyone from the CEO to the shareholders to the board to the markets wondering, is this something that is actually true? Three things I tell every executive team they have to understand that our technology can provide. One, what is this kind of mutating narrative, and where does it actually live? How big is that narrative getting? But importantly, at the same time, how is it spreading like a contagion within the information ecosystem? Which areas of it are they infecting with this narrative? And then the third most important thing is there synthetic amplification? So are there bot networks or inauthentic coordinated activity propping up that narrative? Because that shows intention. This is not conversation. These are not people just talking about this thing. There is someone behind it driving a tradecraft that is trying to get some sort of an outcome. Now, if you can't observe those kinds of things happening around your organization, you are going to get hit at some point. It could be something as simple as a statement on your HR policy on your website. It could be something the CEO says. If we think about United Healthcare and executive protection, don't you want to know if the public is being riled up, especially in a fabricated way, against your organization or industry? These are just things that people have to look at. And again, it's why I think leaders are really waking up to the fact that if you don't know this, you can't do anything. You could spend $500 million on a marketing campaign. It could be derailed overnight with a narrative attack. The technologies we've built, which is like majority of it is artificial intelligence and big network analysis, it enables you to see all of these risk signals that were never before seen. So traditional monitoring platforms and intelligence platforms really only count keywords and look at sentiment. That's kind of like the bottom of the signal stack today. You have to be able to understand that spread and all of the different actor types and all of the different risk signals that indicate a narrative attack, velocity, impact. People talk about understanding if something's a deep fake. Well, how far did that deep fake travel? How many of the people did it touch, and how many did it change their perception around that particular campaign? So you could think of it as a performance measurement on this campaign on the other side, right? So a traditional marketer might think of it like that. But the person who's running it, that nation could have spent billions of dollars building this tradecraft. It could be a nation state, cyber criminal. So you're right, it is a cybersecurity play today more than ever. I mean, some of our investors include, Dave DeWalt from Night Dragon.
We know Dave.
Yep. So,
Yeah,
I think a lot of the cyber players today and chief information security officers are coming to us to fill what they're starting to see as an intelligence gap. I always think of it as this. You have this kind of battle space in the information ecosystem, and defense always trails offense. And the offense on this particular problem has gotten massive and is being funded by a lot of kind of dark money, cyber criminal actors, nation states. So you're gonna want powerful technologies on the other side to defend against it. And just like cybersecurity and cyber intelligence, you need to keep ahead of it. And that's the only space we're focused in, and that's what we do for our customers. There are black market versions of every single AI model available today, right? So whether all of the big companies that are commercially providing these technologies, people will just go to the dark web like they always have and find the ungated versions that don't use those technologies anyway. The problem's out there, it's not going away.
So the probability of that happening is very, very low, would be your point. Like almost impossible.
Almost impossible. Everyone would need to adopt it.
You're really reducing risk is your primary value proposition, I think.
For the cyber communities, yes. Like it's about understanding and measuring these risks so that you can mitigate and reduce them. On the comms side, crisis comms, things of that nature, it's also about like opportunity mining, because looking at the intelligence space in general today, if you can subtract out all of the manipulation, you can see what's actually happening and where you need to focus. If you can't cut that out, then when you're trying to look for opportunities, you're also being sent in the wrong direction. What your system sees as an opportunity could be what someone on the other side wants you to see. I would say the majority of what we do is problem solving, risk reduction, risk detection.
Because that's the
Right.
business case, right?
That is the business case.
If I'm a CEO, I'm worried about my reputation. I'm worried about somebody manipulating my stock or my brand, and there's a probability of that happening, which if I'm a big target is pretty high. Even if I'm not a huge target, it could be. And so you're going to reduce that risk by some amount.
Correct.
And presumably you can quantify that.
The way to think about it is, yes, we can quantify the risk, and when we get in there, what they see is, hey, this thing is so high resolution that we can use it for other things as well.
And you're a software company.
Yeah, it's a AI SaaS platform, cloud-based, so we can just drop in and operate very quickly.
Right, and so Palo Alto and CrowdStrike and CyberArk, they're all software companies too, but the reason why they trade at a somewhat higher valuation than some software companies is because it's their cybersecurity. So do we think of you in that same context?
Yeah. I mean, you can see that even just looking at our investment portfolio. The people who are backing us right now, who are pretty, kind of forward-looking, are seeing this as a cybersecurity play. We've thought of it as a cybersecurity play. I've thought of it as a cybersecurity play since 2018. The market now is starting to see that as well. That wasn't always the case.
Do you sell it to CISOs or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Is that your primary?
A lot of our pipeline and inbound today are CISOs, and I think in the next, year, 2 years, that's going to be the majority of where we're really selling. I think what ends up happening with CISOs is that you have these risk profiles that end up falling on them, like digital fraud management, identity management, KYC. Those weren't the purview of the CISO at one point, and then they had to just start doing it, right? The way I think about this and the way they're starting to think about it is, in a world where these are cyber criminals who are running the campaigns in the first place, right? There are nation states running these campaigns, and they're hitting the organizations they're entrusted to protect. It certainly doesn't go to the PR person or the marketing person to solve those problems. It goes to the CISO and the threat intelligence directors. And so that is just naturally becoming where the market's going, as opposed to 2-3 years ago, where it was more the chief communications officer and crisis.
So what's if I'm a CISO or CEO or risk manager, what's the best way for me to protect myself against these threats?
I mean, you have to fight fire with fire. You have to have a defensive technology platform to really let you understand how the other adversary is working. And today, they can work unobserved. So I think about this as observability, almost night vision into what's happening in the information space, so that again, you can have decision dominance at the highest level, at the board level, at the CEO level. How do you communicate these things to your customers? It's almost table stakes. In a couple of years, if you don't have this, it's going to be almost like not having intrusion detection within your network infrastructure today. It's going to be like unheard of. But today, it's like it's new, and you see only like really the sharpest CISOs and threat intelligence teams starting to bring us in.
Are your competitors kind of do-it-yourself, cobbling together, like you mentioned earlier in the Forrester report, it was CrowdStrike. I mean, CrowdStrike doesn't really do this. They do some posture management and things like that, which you're very good at. But they don't do this specifically.
They don't do this using technology. I think traditionally, this has been the purview of OSINT, so open source intelligence analysts, that are doing work with a basket of tools and basically doing like PDF as a service, and then someone has to read that, and it's like a snapshot. And then you're kind of not really seeing what's happening the next moment and the next moment, right? What we're really providing often to those teams is how do we make one person able to do the work of 100 of those analysts? Because again, we're a generative AI company. We're building our first AI agent model to do this. So how do you accelerate them and be able to do it always on, 24/7 at this very high resolution that they never would have seen before? So these could be our partners. The really large cyber firms, we could easily deploy their teams of technology to do this.
Do you have any? Who are your backers?
So, Night Dragon is one. We have 1011 Ventures, which is a pure play cybersecurity investor. Doralton Capital.
Right. So those guys, they're players. People watch what they do and say, "Oh, it must be a big market there." So, and you've raised, is it correct, 32 million? Is that right, or is that an outdated number?
We'll make an announcement probably in the next week or two. It's but yeah, we've raised.
Oh, that's what Google said.
We've raised so far we've raised 32. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. And you're in the process of looking for more capital, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Always, right?
IPO in your future someday?
I mean, I saw our logo on here a little while ago. It looked pretty good.
Well,
so,
we'd love to have you back
yeah.
when that happens. So.
Absolutely.
Wasim, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right.